So we're going to be talking today about modesty. Now, of course, we know that modesty is something that God wants of Noahide women, as he wants of all women, to be dressed modestly. And for some people, it's a challenge. Like for all women, it might be a challenge, modesty. And for some people, it's not. But it's really a very critical commandment for a woman, and I wanted to focus on it. Now, it's actually interesting because if we look for the source of the commandment of modesty biblically, it's actually not about women and it's not about clothing. The source is talking about in a time of war, where it says that every soldier that goes out to war should have a shovel. If you're using some place for your bodily needs, you need a shovel because you have to dig and cover that excrement. Why? Because God is in your camps. So your camp should be holy. That is the original source of the idea of modesty. God is in your camps. Your camp should be holy, be discreet, be modest, be godly. To keep our bodies holy, they have to be properly covered. And there's many laws about to what degree we're supposed to be modest, like changing in a bathroom, not in a bedroom, like covering our neckline, front and back, and our elbows, not wearing things that are too tight-fitting or seductive, nothing excessively loud, look at me. And of course, though this is optional for a Noahide woman, but it's considered righteous, it says a pious Noahide woman covers her hair. For a Jewish married woman, it's not optional. It's very, very important, and there's many, many blessings associated with it. For a Noahide woman, it is optional, but considered very, very, very significant. It's actually interesting. There's really only two differences I found for Noahide women versus for Jewish women. One is covering hair, which is optional, but very encouraged, as it says a pious Noahide woman is covering her hair. And the other one is pants, where for a Jewish woman it's completely forbidden. And for a Noahide woman, if this would be loose cutting, not form-fitting, but very loose pants, then it would be considered acceptable, where for a Jewish woman it's not. But besides that, basically the laws are the same for Noahide women and for Jewish women. So we're dressing, all women are supposed to dress in a modest way because God wants us to. God wants us to. Bottom line, there's many, 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 many other things we could say and we will say and that are good to know for yourself, good to know if you're sharing this with others. But the foundational concept is this is what God wants. God wants us. And then additionally, there's many other things we could say, like when God is telling us to dress in a dignified fashion, God really is gifting us with dignity. In other words, the more I'm dressing as God is asking me to dress, the more my inner dignity is being expressed. And the more I dress in a fashion that's exposing, making my body out there for the world, it creates more outer and inner sense of lack of worth, of cheapness. Now, sometimes it's very difficult to change. And it could be if you have not yet completely converted all of your clothing to God's vision of modesty, you can maybe take one idea and give God that piece of you. Meaning, if you can't give God your whole closet, give God your elbows, give God your neckline, give God things that are too tight or don't feel refined or don't feel like you're God's princess. Who here has, when they've done this, as they've shifted their clothing, they've actually felt the difference? And they really felt an inner change as they changed in their dress.
I know I have started, if something is too V-necked for me in that I feel really uncomfortable. In fact, trying to find like something to wear underneath it if I don't want to throw it away. I'm more conscious of well, I never did like my upper arms, so I kind of a little bit longer. some stuff not below the elbow, but near the elbow and that. Um, Even when I am looking for dresses, um, finding more of the length. Um, it may not come all the way down in the sleeve, but it's there, and the neckline. In fact, I even got a shawl that if I need be, to wear it, on top of that. So
So do you see an inner change, feeling inside different when you're dressing like this?
I feel more, I don't know the word, but acceptable, not to anybody else, but to God.
Acceptable to God. That makes a lot of sense. That sounds like the right word. Natalie, what were you going to add?
There we go. Found the button. Sorry. I've got more of an audience now. No, you gotta listen. Um, my only challenge was, so yes, I feel different when I dress that way, and I love to dress that way. Funny enough, I don't typically cover my hair like at work because of like the environments that I have to go in. And one time I actually was where I mostly wear dresses at work, but actually one time I couldn't go on site because the construction rules were that you couldn't wear dresses, which I totally forgot. Right.
Oh,
But what's funny this year for Rosh Hashanah, the first day, I did end up having to go do some customer meetings in the morning. And so I did have like a nice dress and I did my wrap, my fancier wrap. Cause I'm like, well, I mean, it's Rosh Hashanah. Like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And we'll kind of see how this goes. I wasn't too sure how it would go because I struggle with that one in the like I want to be modest, but I like wearing my hair wrapped like that, but I also don't want to like stick out like a sore thumb and you are a princess and draw a lot of attention to it either. So I struggle with that one. The good news is it went really well. Everybody wanted to hear more about Rosh Hashanah before the meeting started. So that was actually a lot of fun. I mean, it couldn't have gone better. I was like, I mean, I was sweating bullets and I was so relieved that it went so well.
So how do you feel when you're
But that
dressing that
that
way?
that's the struggle that I have. I do wear dresses at work and I do try to make you don't have to hold the phone. I do try to make what I wear modest by like adding pieces to the neck or adding like a cardigan over it to cover up. Some of the stuff that drives me crazy is stuff that you buy that's modest that still has lower necklines in the front and the back, or these skirts that have these big slits up the side. And like, I'm not particularly good at sewing anymore. So
Natalie, when you dress modestly, do you feel the difference?
I do. I do really like it. I feel so much better. I feel more like self-conscious, but in a good way, in that you you feel you know that you're representing God and Noahides, and so it's like having that angel on your shoulder joke, right? Of like you really want to be on your best behavior. And ironically, that's the other reason I've struggled because it's like I don't want to dress strictly and look like an Orthodox Jew and then go eat ham at a restaurant. Right? Because we can, and I have a lot of allergies. So usually ham or bacon or sausage is like the only thing I can eat when we take clients out to lunch. And some way, somehow, religion usually comes up in conversation anyway. And I don't try to bring it up, but God finds a way to bring it up. But I don't want somebody to think that like, well, I know a religious Jew who eats ham. Like,
Right. So yeah, you do have to say that. What I would say, I understand what you're saying, that if you're wearing this wrap, this beautiful wrap, on one hand your hair is covered, on the other hand it's sort of conspicuous, and you're thinking modesty is you're not trying to be conspicuous, but maybe everything in its right setting, you could wear a baseball cap, or in the winter you could wear, there's plenty of little winter caps. I have a few that I wear over my wigs, and that covers most of would cover most of your hair, and it wouldn't be so conspicuous as versus this like beautiful exotic wrap that you could save more for, like you're saying, the synagogue or a holiday or a setting where people are used to that, and it wouldn't be eye evoking. But in your work, it might be. But there are other things you could find that probably could cover your hair. Danielle?
Sorry, I was in the middle of plating dinner. Uh, but I will say yes, definitely. Also, I'm so glad this topic came up because this is something that I've been struggling more with now that I am not anywhere near a community. Like, just to be completely honest, because I don't know, it's like, that's just, I guess, one of the downfalls of not being near a community where you're seeing other people dressing modestly, right? I mean, when like if I have to go into Chicago to work, or if I'm going on a play date or something with the kids or doing something with Hope in School, I try to dress very modestly. But I have become very lax in my like own yard and own home and all living further out, it's like, and I why that bothers me that I've gotten so lax with that is because my girls, right? Because they see what I wear.
Right.
Um,
That's huge.
so that's something that I've been thinking about in the last year or so. And then I've never felt comfortable covering my hair. Something I've never felt comfortable doing. So anyway, but to answer your question, yes, I always feel more refined, feel closer to God. Definitely 100%. And if I'm not dressed modestly, like if I'm in my yard or something and my neighbor comes over or something, it's like, oh wow, it makes me just so aware of like, someone else saw me and I wasn't dressed modestly. And I'm not saying I'm wearing like a bikini or anything, right? But but for what what
For
we
your
should be wearing.
standards, you feel, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
modest.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
maybe what you could do, like I'm saying, is just go through your closet and like once a week or once every 2 weeks, however much you can bear, just toss something out
Yeah,
and say like, okay, yes, of course, in theory, I could wear something under it and wear something over it, but I know I
right,
don't. So
right,
since I don't, I just need to get rid of this. And I
right.
think I think you raised two very important things. One
Hmm.
thing that Danielle raised, which of course is definitely relevant, let's say to Natalie, is the idea of children. And as we dress, that's what boys and girls see as, oh, this is what's appropriate. Because hopefully children look at their parents that they're appropriate.
Hmm.
And it's a very hard world to be modest in. Just like it's a hard world to be honest in, it's a hard world to be modest in. So we really need to create for our children such models. And honestly, Noahides need to do this even more intently than Jewish women. Because as Danielle said, Jewish women are in a community. So the children are growing up with a community of people that are dressed modestly, and that becomes their norm. But for Noahide, it's just you. It's just you. So what your children see, they have to see it so strongly from you because there's nothing else in their world that's really supporting that. So it's ultra important for a Noahide woman to dress modestly. And of course, for someone who says, well, I don't have children around. But again, going back to the model, I represent God. I'm God's billboard. People know I'm a Noahide, or they don't know, but they're going to find out. Or maybe someone else will tell them. I'm representing how God wants his daughters to dress. So, especially where there's no community, or in your specific area, there's no other community, how you dress is so, so important in expressing this is how God wants his daughters to dress. Now, Danielle said that it's always been hard for her to cover her hair, and I can appreciate that struggle. And of course, a Noahide does have the wiggle room of it that a Jewish woman does not, because for a Jewish woman, it's as mandatory as covering your elbows and your collarbones. It's totally mandatory and also tied in with many, many blessings. So obviously, it's very important if so many blessings are associated with it. So for a Noahide, it's not mandatory, but I assume all the blessings are there as well. It's the only thing I know in the Zohar, in 4 places, it speaks of covering hair as giving blessings to children and to grandchildren. So that's pretty unusual to find something that we're told the blessings extend also to the grandchildren. So maybe you could keep that in mind, and that might help motivate you. Again, You can say, hey, listen, I'm not even doing what I got to do. So definitely try to do what you have to do, but also to extend further, not mandatory, but the source of such blessing specifically for our children and grandchildren. Natalie, you wanted to add something?
Like what you said, in the religious communities, it's funny when I do video calls with my best friend who lives in an Orthodox village in Israel. When her son was little, like 3, could barely talk, he's asking his mom in Hebrew, where's her mitzpahat?
Oh,
So hopefully you
So
ran and
she's
put
like,
one on.
I think I turned off the video because she's explaining, like, I think she was like, well, Aunt Natalie's like at her house right now, so she's not wearing, or something like that, right?
That would just be more confusing.
It was very funny.
Yes, it's definitely what we do tremendously affects children, and we have a tremendous obligation. And there's, as we're saying, all of God's children out there that see us wherever we are, and we represent something. Every Noahide is God's billboard. Every one of us, every Noahide is God's billboard.
can I add something, please?
Sure, Dixie, let me hear.
You're the one that got me covering my head.
Oh, that's so nice. I appreciate hearing that.
Well, remember when Jack and I used to listen to you, and you kept saying you got to cover your head, and I was already dressing pretty modestly by then, by the time I had gotten with you. And it was harder on Jack than it was me to cover my hair.
Really?
Well, he loved my hair,
Ah.
and it was just, he didn't want it covered.
So it
But
was his sacrifice for God.
it was, because he was not happy about that. But anyway,
But
just
you did it. I
Yep.
appreciate hearing that. You never know what you're saying, who's listening when. Every person has their time. Every person has a time when they can hear it and when they can change. It's hard. Change is hard. And especially for a Noahide woman, where you could tell yourself, well, I don't have to. She's clearly saying I don't have to.
Well, my thing was, I'm to the point now, if I don't have my hair covered going out, sometimes I'll run out to the barn and think, I didn't put my hat on. What happens if I run into somebody? And I mean, that has gone really far compared to where I came from.
That's really beautiful. I have a woman in another class a Jewish woman, who got, I don't remember, maybe a wig or something to cover her hair for her to go to synagogue. She was becoming religious in the process. And she put it on like for the first time when she went that Saturday to synagogue, came home, and the next day on Sunday she was going to something like Costco. And she was driving there, and she suddenly felt like naked. She's like, oh my God, my hair's not covered. She felt like exposed, and she literally turned around and went home and covered her hair and went back. And she wasn't religious, but everybody, a different commandment affects them differently. And she really deeply, deeply felt, like Dixie is saying, when she's going to the barn, just this sense of like nakedness without her hair covered. And we're talking about modesty in general, because modesty sometimes is a trigger word for people. Synonyms are like dignity, refinement, grace, royalty, regal. That's the feeling tone of modesty. Sometimes people absorb a negative feeling toward this commandment, toward being modest, and they don't think of it that way. And it's really important to change our mindset and really to understand it's something that brings out our dignity, our refinement, our grace, our royalty. That's what modesty should feel like. I don't know if anyone here ever had as I'm calling it, any negative feeling about God's restricting how we dress and needed to unravel that at any point. Anyone ever went through that? Great. Well, a lot of people do. Women sometimes don't like being told how to dress, or it's interesting, like Dixie is saying, her husband didn't want her to cover her hair. And sometimes women don't want to cover their hair or don't want to cover their elbows. What's exciting about my elbows, or this or that, and it's really important to understand this is about our dignity. This is about our royalty. This is about our refinement. And sometimes you see religious women that don't look so good, and they're very modest. And I'd be like, oh, I wouldn't want to look like that. And sometimes look at religious women that look really good and they're modest and be like, oh, wow, hey, because everyone has a unique style. Everyone can take the laws and then do with them, as they're going to express it. So some people look more regal and refined than others. But in general, the overarching concept is this is how God wants me to dress, and God wants me to look beautiful. It's important to look beautiful. However, we define beauty. Obviously, everyone has a different standard or concept what beauty means, a different style, a different perspective. But again, we represent God. We're his daughters. As Natalie said before to her daughter, we're his princesses. And as such, we should look beautiful. And we should look modest. And the two should go hand in hand. Natalie?
I was going to point out that when I was in high school, my best friend that converted, she would dress modestly with long skirts any time of the year. And she was, Dixie, you'd appreciate this. She was quite the equestrian. So I don't know how she always made it work, but it was one time she came to school in jeans, regular pants. And it's so funny because you think about the stuff that the rest of us girls were wearing. And this was a nerdy high school. So it wasn't like we were all wearing a lot of crazy stuff. But I can remember all the guys noticing her that one day that she wore pants and she felt so self-conscious. And it's because it was such a contrast from what she normally wore that it made an impression. I can remember the day, and this was 20 years ago. And I'm thinking, oh, there's something to this. If you dress modestly, then you look good either way. You don't have to dress all provocatively.
Yeah, there's something to this. Absolutely.
Oh, it was dramatic. I mean, it was palpable. It was so funny.
I don't think she felt it funny, but yeah.
No, we laughed about it later.
Okay, later we can laugh. It's very interesting, this whole idea of modesty as it's meant to be and beauty as it's meant to be. I think we can really see with the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Chaim Mushka, because she was so holy. Literally, she performed miracles for people. People turned to her for blessings, and she gave blessings, and miracles happened. And she was brilliant. And she was the one that her father, the Rebbe before the current Rebbe, entrusted with all his legal affairs. She had such a mind. She was the one her father took into exile when he could take one family member into exile. When he was sent to exile for supposedly 3 years, it was like a week, but it was supposed to be 3 years. He chose her. She was very, very careful with the laws of modesty. She was very careful, as even there's told, this was when the Nazis were in France and they were still in Paris at this time. And a man came into her house to give something, secretive, and the Nazis were there. And she opened the door and stood by the door. And he's like, what are you doing? We want to go in the house and we don't want anyone to see us. And she's like, no. Part of the laws of modesty are also yichud, that a man and woman cannot be alone together. Of course, it was true peril. Of course, her husband was in the city. There were many loopholes, many legalistic ways she could have done it, but she wasn't looking for that. She was strictly following the letter of the law, and she wasn't worried about the Nazis. She was worried about God's will. And at the same time, she very much focused on beauty. Herself, her home, her table. She wore very elegant clothing because she was truly God's princess. She represents the king. She's the queen. And she dressed the part.
Can I answer that?
Dixie?
Well, I had a young man come and I wanted to know if he could hunt on the land. And I went to the door, and we got to talking, and I stepped outside, and he literally stayed for 2 hours. He was an amazing young man. He was a pilot. He's just a really person that you meet that you don't meet every day. But anyway, I never asked him to come in. I just told him to sit down on one of the chairs outside, and we talked for 2 hours.
Right. And that was the right way to do it.
Yeah. And that's the way I do anytime a man comes. They have to stay out.
Right.
And I won't let them touch me when they all want to shake your hand. And it's like, no way. And I say, I still belong to Jack. I don't belong to anybody else.
Right. Right. We're supposed to be careful with all of those things. And that's all part of modesty. Part of modesty is not having a man in the house when you're alone. Part of modesty is not having a man touch you. All of these things that have become so casual in our society, like touch. God says, no, that's not casual at all. Not casual
And
at all.
I sorry to interrupt again, but about the touch, I see why. Not only that, I mean, it can make a sensation or something too if somebody is that inclined, but it can also pass on germs because you don't know where their hands have been. And so, I mean, it's just interesting. Why? There's more to it than just there's a lot to it to not touch.
Absolutely. Because whatever God says, there's a lot to it. We see what we see, and there's everything we don't see that's also part of it.
Yeah.
But what I was bringing out about Rosa Chaimushka, because I think it's really important to understand that modesty and beauty are not like, oh, well, you're going to be modest, you're going to be beautiful. And that, no, modesty can and should be beautiful. Because God wants us to be modest, and God wants us to be beautiful. And as Dixie was saying, there's so many layers for everything. And why does God so much care that we should be beautiful? Well, we're his daughter. We represent him. And we should represent him in a beautiful fashion and in a modest fashion. It's very interesting. It says in the Midrash that when God created woman, the first woman, Eve, Chava, it says God built the rib that he took from man, from Adam, and fashioned it into a woman. Now, the word built in the Hebrew also means considered. The Hebrew word is vayiven, which means built, and also means thought, considered. So the Midrash says, on this idea of he built the rib, he considered the rib, that God considered from what, and please listen closely to this, because to me this is so inspirational and significant about what modesty really means for us. It says he considered from what part of Adam's body he should create woman, Chava, Eve. And he said, well, I'm not going to create her from Adam's head, because I don't want her to be swell-headed. I'm not going to create her from his eyes, lest she become like very flirtatious. I'm going to create her from the modest part of man. Because even when he's naked, that part is covered, right? Because your arms are covering your ribs. So God is choosing the most modest part, so to speak, of the body to create woman. And as he created Eve, as he created Chava, with each limb, he said to her, be a modest woman. Be a modest woman. To me, that is so amazing that God, as he formed prototype woman, what was the focus? Be modest. Be modest. Here's your arm, here's your elbow, here's your hands, here's your fingers, here's your nails. Be modest, be modest, be modest, be modest. He's like drilling this in the very structure of woman. It's that significant. Be modest. And maybe that's why modesty is so challenging, which would mean it's always challenging, not just now. And I think it always has been challenging because it's part of our essence service of God. Well, if something's our essence service of God, it's also going to be our essence challenge, right? You know why you're here by knowing what's most difficult for you. So if as womanhood, God is saying, be modest, be modest, be modest, be modest. With every limb of our body, he's saying, be modest. This is who we need to be. And that's why it could be very challenging. Natalie?
It's funny you point out the no touching, because that is one that I have really struggled with at work. I managed to give a good vibe to like engineers and whatnot, and like unless they initiate shaking hands, I don't shake hands, and engineers are not as huggy people, so I get away with that. What I struggle with are the other salespeople, because even if you kind of do like a body language and you turn and you try to avoid, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm short, it's difficult to not get hugged. And I even will do, like, I won't do like a full body. If they go to do it, I do like a sideways maneuver to like try to get the impression of them.
Why don't you just say it straight? You know, as a religious woman, I don't touch a man.
I think because I've been nervous about embarrassing them to say that.
You could send an email.
Oh, there you go.
A friend of mine who's in the world of politics, and she was having a lot of issues. I mean, she was like it was called modern Orthodox Jewish woman. And, you know, as a politician, you have to touch everyone and hug everyone. And every time it's all about building connections and connections and connections and networking and collabing. And I mean, this is the world of politics. And I don't remember what inspired her, but we spoke about it a lot. And I said, just tell it straight. And if you can't tell it straight, send an email in advance to someone you know you're meeting, or the men you know that have a problem in this area. Like, she knew these certain men always seem to be touching her. And like, you know, just tell them. If you can't tell them to their face, tell them beforehand. You know, send them an email or tell it to them. You know, as a religious woman, I don't touch. You know, don't touch. You know, whatever line you can think of that works. It's just like, can't do that. I'm sorry. You know, just like stiffly hold your body. Yeah, very clear body language, and say, I'm a religious woman.
Natalie,
I'm a religious woman. Just shake your head. I'm a religious woman, and hold your body to yourself. I'm a religious woman. It's not, your body's not for someone else unless you desire it. And if you're not, why are you allowing it to happen?
Can I make a suggestion, Natalie? I used to be worried about offending people when I wouldn't let them shake my hand or hug me. And you'd be surprised when I would tell them no. I don't remember exactly how I'd say it, but usually I'd say, no, I still belong to Jack. I'm sorry. And you'd be surprised. They take it amazing. They go, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it. You'd be surprised. They will respect it. And it's amazing.
I agree. I've had many times. Many times, and I just like it's like, it doesn't cry. I mean, it's not gonna happen. Don't let it happen. And like, no, I don't do that. I'm a religious woman. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, exactly. That's what everyone says. I'm so sorry. Nobody says like, what's your problem? You know, why don't you let me touch your hand? Why don't you let me give you a hug? Why don't you let me give you a high five? It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, I think there's more respect for you, more respect when you do that. So Dixie has had that experience. Anyone else has gone down that road and seen what happened when they say something to a man that he should not touch them? Well, definitely everyone should try it. Everyone should feel safe in who they are, safe in protecting their body, and who they want to touch their body should, and not anyone else. Then just say, I'm a religious woman. That's it. You're a religious woman. They understand you're not touching. And they will respect it. They will. They honestly will. If it's someone that's known you for years and done it, they'll be like, huh? So you could say, I'm becoming more religious. I think that's how this woman I'm close to phrased it, because these were men that already had, you know, known her, you know, in the political wilds of Chicago. So maybe she said she was kind of more religious. I don't remember the term she used, but something along those lines. And okay, but what can they say? No, it's wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something just like covering the hair. Now, a lot of these things are not easy, and for some people it's not easy in the work, and for some people it's not easy at home. Like Danielle is saying, when she's outside, she's more conscious. When she's home, it's harder. And Natalie is saying when she's at work, it's harder. And you know, we all have the areas that are going to be our areas of challenge. God doesn't let any of us off the hook. And if this is not a challenge to you, probably another area of serving God is a challenge.
What if you have a service person come in your home, and I'm not married, and it's just me and my dog, and that, I mean, there's no other way for them to be able to fix or whatnot.
So if it's a service person, what you would want to do would be make sure your windows, shades are open, facing the street.
Yeah.
You would want to leave your door open, ideally not only just unlocked, but ajar. And you will want to be sitting so that people from the street could see you, and you would want it to be during day hours when people are passing where you live. So if you put all that into place, it's okay because it's a service person, and the service person, we assume, has a certain need for integrity because of his job. So a service person we would more trust than a random person who has no specific need for integrity. But even with a service person, you'd want the window shades open. You'd want to be in a room where you're observable through the window shades. You want the door ajar, and you want it to be during daytime hours when people pass you on the streets. Again, you don't have to specifically check that someone is walking, but you want it to be a time when people could walk by. And these are all things that honestly make a lot of sense and definitely are how God is saying we're supposed to do it. So Danielle was saying for her, it's a big challenge covering her hair and dressing modestly in her home, though she knows it's really important. And Natalie was saying she has struggles at work, covering her hair and not touching. Anyone has any specific other challenges in the realm of modesty that they still struggle with?
I went to an event today at the Jewish Community Center here, and I didn't have any problems dressing modestly, but I didn't wear my hair covering, and it's not like me to go to something like that without it. I washed my hair this morning, and I was in a hurry, and I know I thought about it, and then I ran down the stairs and jumped in the car and didn't have it. And most of the women there did not have head coverings today. It was a mixture of Reformed, conservative, modern, ultra-Orthodox ladies and gentlemen. But I noticed that the men, the majority of them had their kippah on. And I thought, oh my goodness, if they could remember theirs, I should have made more
Remembered mine.
effort. I really felt like I was missing something. I had everything else, appropriate, but I felt like I was missing something.
That's how it should have felt. That's good that you felt you were missing something. That's a good sign.
And
that means you're on target.
My hair kept falling in my eyes, and I was constantly. It was just kind of I annoyed myself.
Right. But that type of hat that you wear, Natalie, what I mean, like what Sabra's wearing, that's very inconspicuous. I mean, for sure in the winter you could get away with it, no problem. You're just like wearing a little something on your head to keep warm.
You can still see my hair, though.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're pretty much covering it. I think you're doing a really good job. And I'm saying, just going back to what Natalie was saying about feeling conspicuous in this beautiful wrap.
Oh, yes.
But what you're wearing is not conspicuous at all. And it just does the job. And in the winter nowadays, you could do it very simply. And I don't think anyone should look twice. Danielle?
Oh, it's easier in the winter. Yeah. And it's funny because Sabra, that's about how much hair my friend Tirza has out of her big wraps that she wears anyway.
Really?
She has just like a half inch or so of her hair.
Mm-hmm.
It's more because it's more comfortable where it sits on her head.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Danielle, what were you going to add?
I was just going to say, this is the perfect time of year to focus on this, right? Because it's getting cooler, so it makes
much
it
easier now.
Makes it much easier. And then I also want to add, I agree with Natalie. Anytime I've covered my hair or put something in my hair, and maybe it's me, I feel very everybody's looking at me like, why does she have that on her head? But I feel like it brings more attention to me, and I do not want to bring attention to my physical appearance in any way. But I also want to say, Sabra, you look so beautiful and so modest. And I've noticed it in class. I hope it's okay I'm saying that. You just look so lovely. Every class look dressed very nicely and very modestly. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
It's interesting what Danielle's saying about not wanting to be conspicuous. A woman I was close to, who was, I guess maybe will fall into the category of modern Orthodox, but very spiritual. And she really was improving her service of God, but she could not cover her hair. It just was like something in her, she would not do it. And it was just very hard for her. And like she said, she didn't have such beautiful hair. And if she covered her with a wig, it would probably look much prettier. But she just for some reason, she just couldn't do it. Something inside of her was resisting. Anyway, eventually they moved to Israel, the family. And she was teaching there in a very secular Israeli high school. She was teaching in a very, very secular Israeli high school. So of all times to start covering your hair, this is definitely not the time. And then something happened and she got inspired and she's like, okay, God really wants me to cover my hair. And she decided she's going to wear some type of hat just to work. And she was so self-conscious because she knew that this is a very secular, not just secular, like anti-religious environment. This is a very anti-religious environment, and what are they going to say? And she's a teacher there. She's a new teacher. I mean, what are they going to say to her? So she was so self-conscious. And she said that first day when she came in with that head covering, everyone just looked at her and said, "Oh, you look so good. That looks so nice." Everyone just gave her compliment after compliment after compliment on it. She was like, "Wow, that was so weird." That's just sort of God giving her this message of like, don't worry. And another woman that I know who also like modern Orthodox, didn't cover her hair, was religious, but didn't cover her hair. Many women find this challenging, not just Danielle. Many women find it challenging to cover their hair. And after her mother passed away, she was really wanted to cover her hair for her mother. Her mother actually covered her hair, and she sort of felt she wanted to do it for her mother. But she was very self-conscious, especially because she worked in the fashion district in Manhattan. And she was like, oh my gosh, what's she going to do? She's going to come with a hat. She's going to look so off. She'll come with a wig. It'll look so off. I mean, this is a fashion district. This is where everything is focused on fashion. And she had a high position. And what's she going to do? Anyway, she just, whatever. She did it. She got a wig. She came to work that first day in her wig. And she was so self-conscious. What are they going to say to me? And everyone looked at her and said, wow, I love your new hairdo. Looks so good. Your hair's never looked this good. And all she got all day were compliments for her awesome hairdo. And that was it. She wore the wig, never told them it was a wig. And everyone thought her hair just like something made it look a lot better than it ever did before. So a lot of times we're self-conscious, but the world isn't giving out to us what we are envisioning. Like a lot of times it's our own phobias. It's like it says about the Jews when they sent the men that were spying the land of Israel. And the verse says, and we were in our eyes like so small, and so we were in their eyes. And it's a very strong lesson those words are saying. When we envision ourselves a certain way, sometimes that creates how the world responds. But even then, sometimes it's okay. So how much more so when we're envisioning, I'm doing God's will, and this is exactly what he wants. And this is the best for me, for my family, and for my world. Linda?
Yeah, I was wondering, because there's a controversy sometimes I hear that, but about single people who are Noahide be able to have, I mean, I love hats. In fact, at times I watch the Rapunzel, the gals there and how they wrap, and it's just gorgeous in that. And I even got a scarf when I was in Israel several years ago and that. But is there like for singles?
Jewish woman who was never married, there's no obligation to cover her hair. Noahide woman who was never married, there wouldn't be an obligation, no concept on any level besides your own personal sensitivity to it.
I just think that it's just so beautiful when I see ladies that have wrapped their hairs in that, and I know about the wigs and that, but I just wow, first time
I think you're 100% right. It makes perfect sense to me that for a Noahide woman who was never married, there wouldn't really be any issue, except if you like it and if it makes you feel closer to God. Natalie?
One more. One thing I've noticed that I found really interesting just in the last couple of years is actually this revitalization in Catholic communities for women to wear hair veils when they go to church, which I thought was really interesting.
So they're covering their hair?
They do, but it's the Catholic way is different than like the Jewish style. So typically it almost looks like a wedding veil, the ones that I've seen where it's like somewhat translucent and it looks, it's very lacy and their hair is usually down and they just kind of wear it over their hair that's down. It's beautiful. And I just thought that was really interesting that it's like coming back.
Interesting. I mean, listen, it makes sense because obviously all of Christianity and Catholicism, even more because it's more original, is obviously, to take off on Judaism. So it makes sense that in some level, as they got everything else, they could have gotten some distorted version of a woman covering her hair. It makes sense. It totally makes sense. Oops. All right. So I guess we will stop at this point and we will continue next week. And I was so happy to hear that Dixie said that from some previous class, she took on covering her hair. And it's so beautiful, of course, to see, the women I see, obviously, Linda and Sabra and Dixie. And it's so beautiful to see everyone dressed always so modestly, each one in their own way, but always dressed so modestly. And it's really, like, again, I think for every woman, it's somewhat of a challenge, for some more than others, but it's something so precious to God. And as we're saying, God literally built this into his creation of woman. Be a modest woman. Be a modest woman. Be a modest woman. God so much wants that from us. And if it is challenging, or each one in the specificity of our challenge, keeping that vision in mind, this is how God formed prototype woman. Be a modest woman. And then how do I do that? And how do I do that in a beautiful way? And how do I do that in a way that's organic and authentic to myself and comfortable in my environment and modest?